Hey, everybody, welcome to an edition of this PD podcast. My name is Mingo, your host. I've been hosting for over 2 years with over 100 episodes. And in that season of time, we have had our share of like national crises. We went through Houston when it was flooding during a hurricane a few years back. We took the RV straight into the middle of just all of that chaos and met with pastors and talked about relief. We went to Santa Rosa when California fires had devastated an entire city and displaced tens of thousands of people. And we watched the church be the church. And in this season, it's no different. Today, we're practicing social distancing. The churches have closed their doors and they have dispersed. They have gone out to so many different locations as we've seen the beauty of the body of Christ pivot in a way I don't think that anybody in our own lifetime has seen. So here I am in my own garage, quietly tucked away with some sound dampening stuff behind me. I'm not in my doomsday bunker, but I wanted to give you an update on how we're going to be producing content. Usually my commitment has been to raise the bar and to keep our conversations in person, obviously respecting the shelter at home commissioned by our own local leadership. We are just rethinking kind of everything. So here's what I wanted to do. I wanted to give you a new show format that is a little shorter, a little bit more concise, and also very clear on what we're doing day to day and minute to minute in how we're addressing leadership from our own local church, Torrey Pines, the network perspective that we are. We're a church of 9 in a local network, so there's some connectivity there with, I know, a lot of our listeners. And then what does our PD principles teach us and show us that we can take advantage of in this moment? So as I get us going, this idea of up to the minute news that we're considering and how it affects our local church and ministry. You know, we've all heard the news about the extension through April that we're going to have to shelter at home. We obviously know our churches aren't coming together, but, you know, I think everybody's gotten the idea. We've gotten the clarity that church isn't canceled, right? We've just pivoted. We've brought our groups online. We've created spaces that people can connect. And here's some of the best practices that I've heard that I think is worth you at least putting into play yourself. We've gotten our teams together in what we used to call service huddles, right? This is that 15 or 20 minutes before a service time that we would get all of our leaders for a particular service together. Usually we'd be praying for the people coming to that service. We'd be giving any last minute up-to-date news. And we've tried to re-implement that idea in keeping those leaders together relationally, getting together on a Zoom call or on a FaceTime, something that's real, live, and in the moment. And what this is doing is it's allowing us to do a couple of things really well. We're first being able to pray for each other specifically. So as the team leader or as that huddle leader, I'm asking for people, what's happening in your week, what's happening in your world, what's happening in your jobs that we can be praying for as a smaller, tight-knit community. You got to remember those people have been together for a long period of time before they were dispersed. So them coming back together again is going to do something to the heart. It's going to elevate the camaraderie, and it's going to get them praying for each other. And I think a way that maybe they hadn't transparently been praying for and with one another before. So we're taking that team huddle time, we're keeping it in the same time slot, and then we're asking them to do a couple of things as the service goes live online. We're asking them, one, to utilize their own digital space to share with their own community. That gets our message of hope and the gospel in front of more eyes and ears and families. We're also asking them to make the reach to their leaders, the people who are volunteering inside of that particular service, so that they can implement and recreate the same thing. So we're getting them praying for one another. That's the first and I think most important thing the church should and can be doing is praying for and meeting the needs of one another. The Bible says they will know us by our love for one another, and this is a way that we display that love. Secondly, we're asking them to share the weekend content. That's the easiest way in a season when we know so many people are losing their jobs, or they're getting cutbacks, they're getting percentage cutbacks in their salaries. one of the easiest ways that people can continue to be with you in ministry and mission is just by sharing the feeds that you're putting out there as a church and as a ministry. Lastly, the thing that getting that huddle together does, it allows them to engage as online hosts. So I know I've talked to lots of pastors who are telling me keeping ahead of the curve as far as engagement while we're putting our services online is so difficult. We don't have enough staff. We don't have enough active participants. One of the easiest ways you can bring participation and engagement to the table is by commissioning who used to be your ushers, who used to be your worship band, who used to be your greeters or your parking ministry. Get them online and get them talking inside of that comment thread, and watch all of your engagement go up, because everybody has a different perspective as they hear the message come out. And if people are looking for a way to actively serve the church, a great way is to jump inside of a comment thread as you're putting your church material out there, and just getting them to host and pray and communicate and say hi to other people as they see them come into the conversation. So pray for one another, share the material, and get people engaged as hosts. Get them to understand that every person is a pastor. Rick always says every member is a minister, and man, this is the season where we're seeing that come to life. That's my first kind of what I'm looking at right now up to the minute. Obviously, we're all looking at what Easter is going to look and feel like. I'm happy to share what we're trying to consider as a pathway here. We have this a little bit of a luxury in the sense that we've got a network of teachers and worship teams. So we're looking right now at how we leverage the collective talent of speakers, musicians, while still understanding we've got to play our part to be safe. You know, as we're talking about coming together to produce one cohesive piece of programming, I can't help but think about the risk associated with that. You know, if this is our A-level bench, if these are our best worship leaders and we send them into a room together to produce something that we can all use, are we putting their health at risk by asking them to provide their talents in some way, shape, or form? And I hope you're considering that too. My dad was the one that told me this. He said, "Hey, I've moved my perspective from being like, I'm gonna wear protective gear, I'm gonna wear a mask, or I'm not gonna go out and see as many people or do as many things because I don't want to catch what they have." He's now shifted that perspective to being, I don't want to give what I might possibly have myself. And that should be your perspective. That should be your own consideration in this moment. If you're thinking about getting your leaders together for anything in person, because you have to produce something that's going to go live to the internet later or this weekend, just please put the most amount of safety consideration into place. So I'm bringing masks to my team. I'm going to try to self-record my sermon over at the church in a location that is broad and spread out. That made us have to shift where we do what we do, just as a way to kind of show, I think optics, Ted Vaughn reminded me, optics are so important right now. What your church displays as a way of being with your community matters right now, and how you produce what you produce falls inside of that consideration point. So that's what we're thinking about Easter as we're thinking through the mechanics of how to set it up. I want to tee up a conversation, or at least a portion of conversation that I had in a very impromptu setting. Ted Vaughn and I, a mentor of mine, a guy who's speaking a lot of life into churches everywhere. He's connected to several kind of like leadership wheelhouses and thought equity and leadership equity circles. He and I had a great conversation on Facebook Live the other night, and I'm going to provide a small portion of that conversation up next. And then in the show notes, wherever you're watching this, you can actually click to go find that conversation. If you're looking for it, really the meat of our conversation, if I can't edit it down because it's on Facebook Live and it's kind of locked up there, scrub forward to the 15-minute mark. That's where Ted and I really get into this conversation. Everything before the 15-minute mark is me kind of setting up a new DSLR Facebook Live kind of combination where I'm trying to up the level of imagery. And if you want to see how that happens and what pieces of material I'm using to make that happen, you can watch through the first 15 minutes before I engage Ted in a conversation. So enjoy that moment inserted here, and I'll catch you afterwards for the final piece of this conversation. As we come out of this conversation with Ted and I, here's what I want to do is I want to challenge you as a church leader to not fear thinking outside the box. Obviously, everybody has had to come up with all these new rhythms and pathways. But one of the things that Rick reminds me of always as we were together in ministry during Purpose Driven was not to be afraid of failing fast. You want to fail fast and you want to fail cheap. What does that mean? That means don't hold back on a new idea that you might be thinking about that could move your ministry forward. Put it out there. Don't commit to it. Don't send an all staff, an all church correspondence saying this is our new normal. The reason why is because it may be terrible, but you shouldn't be afraid to fail because that's going to teach you something as you move your ministry forward in this new season. One of the things by example is we started by doing announcements and hosting live in person through our church lobby. We made a shift and we did it through Zoom with multiple people engaged. And we noticed some things that made it advantageous for us to try again. And we saw some things that made it not so great in comparison to some other things we did. I celebrated my team for trying it. I celebrated the effort because as we try and figure out new pathways, there will be some great learnings you have. So listen, local leader, don't be afraid to fail. Just do it fast, right? Don't draw it out. If you see it and it doesn't work and it doesn't connect and it doesn't achieve what you wanted it to achieve, pivot, move away from it and try something different. Make sure that whatever you're experimenting with, that it doesn't break the bank, right? Fail cheap so that you have more resources, which are incredibly tight right now, to learn and succeed in a different way. So I hope this encourages you. I hope that conversation snippet with Ted encouraged you. And if you want to go catch the rest of that conversation, you can either catch them in the show notes below, or you can go to my personal Facebook page, Mingo Palacios. My personal Facebook page will have that video in my video section, or you can just dig through my feed and you'll find a video that looks way too good for normal Facebook Live. That is the conversation. Go check that out. I love you guys. I'm praying for you specifically. If you want to email me or if you want to catch me on Twitter and tell me how you're pivoting, what you're learning, I'd love to feature it in one of the next conversations. Find me on Twitter at Mingo2. You can always find great purpose-driven resources at pd.church. I'm here for you. I'm with you. I'm supporting you. I love you. I'll talk to you on the next episode.